Thanks very much. Yeah, look, I think it's very much one of initially you just are, you're just in it, and that's a beautiful thing, and you're not so sort of aware of being in it, and in those early years, I think I'll just paint a little picture. I was on a building site. My parents had bought the property just a year before I was born, and my father had just moved up from well, briefly Melbourne, but before that he'd come from Tasmania, where he'd sort of run away from Bill's confidence in pushing permaculture to the world and
Yeah.
gone and tried to do a bit of practice himself, because they were very different ages, and that was beneficial to the movement. But Dave had gone off and done some practice and put his head down to put these ideas into the soil, so to speak. And when he moved to Victoria from Tasmania, and he'd been living in the city for a little while, and met my mother Sue, and they had bought this property in central Victoria, just about 100 kilometres northwest of Melbourne. And they were really, they'd done that pretty intentionally, looking for a place in a small community that had, well, I would say, lots of the sort of permaculture desirable traits from soil and weather through to the community aspects that they were looking for. And they were really wanting to build on Dave's past experience. So he started with a lot of design of the small 2.25 acre property, and they were pretty seriously getting into that because my father had just built a house for my grandmother and had quite a bit of experience in building and growing food. And this was like, right, my opportunity to design it all and do it properly.
The
Back
book
to you, Rich.
Permaculture in the Bush refers to the property that David designed for his mother, which Oliver mentioned earlier. And that was his first sort of solo publication that he produced with Sue. Sue has sort of been bringing the books together, I guess. She was the publisher for David as the author.
But definitely Sue's been running the business side of things more in the administration and organising a lot of in the publishing in the early days when it was just Sue and David doing it. And he also had me as a young child. My mother had gone back to do some work, and so he was Mama Dave, and I was on the building site. And so, by all accounts, my first word was thistle, which is a bit hard to believe, given. But there were, being in it, there were prickles, there were things around, there were lots of things
Yeah.
being on a building site. But it was a very, very practical, immersive upbringing, definitely, not least of all being on a building site. And that building site, pretty quickly, vegetation grew up around it, and there was very quickly food to eat. And I think something that I remember a visit from Bill came. He was doing some filming of something, and he visited the property, and I think I was about 6. And he asked me, "What do you like about permaculture, Oliver?" And I said, "Oh, I can eat it. There's food everywhere." I'm obsessed with food. I go around eating things. And I remember another time my father got annoyed with me because I had my hands full. I was doing something, and I leant over and just bit the head out of a lettuce. He said, "Hey, you can't just eat the center." I really enjoyed that outdoor lifestyle, and computers and TV didn't really come into my life much in the early years. We didn't have a television. And yeah, so I was out in it and making things, and really seeing my parents make stuff, and
Yeah.
the building of the house, but also all sorts of other things around the property. So I was very much inspired to make things. I had a pretty practical sort of upbringing, and yeah, didn't have television, but computers did come in through my father was publishing books and small things on that cusp of desktop publishing, where things were changing from sort of cut and paste through to computer layout. And some of the early publications that Richard will allude to in a little bit were done at that time in pretty sort of basic computer software. And yeah, so I suppose I started having a bit of interaction with computers then.
Principles and Pathways sold 40,000 copies from 2002 to 2018 when it was the revised edition was created.
I think in retrospect, we can look at it and say that was a real success. At the time, the prospect of how many it would sell was much more questionable. And I think I think David has said, for a book of complex ideas, that's certainly, I think very impressive in hindsight. It's been an easy one for me in some ways, in that I was born into it, and some people say it's amazing what you do, and I don't feel that myself. I feel like other people's journeys have come so much further and had to challenge so many more paradigms, and so yeah, I feel really grateful. I haven't had kids yet, but I would love to have my kids grow up immersed in it.
And then when I started doing marketing and got the desk job, I got so stinking depressed for those first couple of years. I didn't even know what to do with myself. And so when I found permaculture, it was like all of these systems, I can build systems, design systems in my space that allow me to live in right relationship and to feel always connected, not apart from nature. And so that's really what has resonated with me all these years.